first two videos of this three-part series, I discussed Titanic's design and construction, and their relevance to the sinking. In my opinion, the design and construction of Titanic were fine and did not fail to meet standards of the time. As one of my favorite engineering professors said, there are only two true causes of failure. Someone did something they weren't supposed to do, or someone didn't do something they were supposed to do. In this video, I will discuss how this basic failure principle applied to the people that may have contributed to the Titanic disaster. The captain of a ship at sea is an absolute supreme command, legally and otherwise, and nobody can interfere. The idea that Bruce Ismay or other White Star executives may have contributed to the disaster by urging Captain Smith to arrive in New York as fast as possible is oftentimes discussed. Whether or not this influenced Captain Smith to order the ship to go faster than he normally would have has never been proven. Regardless, it was ultimately Smith's decision. The increased speed of the ship makes potential impact damage from an iceberg greater, but more importantly also reduces the amount of time the ship has to try to avoid the collision after the lookouts see the iceberg. It has been reported through testimony, Titanic's speed barely changed at any point throughout the voyage, and was going over 22 knots at the time of collision. In this case, literally an extra second or two could have been hugely beneficial and may have been enough to avoid disaster entirely, or reduce it significantly. Using the testimony of many witnesses, including Captain Rostron of the Carpathia, there were several icebergs and small growlers within a few miles of where Titanic eventually sank, some of which were estimated to be over 100 feet tall. Captain Smith had received many warnings of ice, including one around 6:30 p.m. from the Californian, a ship that was estimated to be 10 to 20 miles away from Titanic when it sank. Based on testimony, the Californian had passed 3 large icebergs, and this message was delivered by Harold Bride to Captain Smith. Keep in mind this is approximated to be 5 hours before Titanic struck the iceberg. It was estimated by the crew, including Second Officer Charles Lightoller, that they would enter the ice field that the Californian warned them about at around 9:30 p.m., which was about 2 hours before the collision. The Californian also sent another message to Titanic at 11:07 p.m. stating that they had stopped and were completely surrounded by ice, but this message was supposedly never passed along. It was, without doubt, known to multiple members of the crew, including the captain, that Titanic was steaming at nearly maximum speed directly into an ice field that contained large icebergs without any moonlight for extra vision. Due to the southern route Titanic was taking to reach New York, it was unexpected to encounter ice. Around 6 p.m. the night of the sinking, Captain Smith changed course, heading even further south after receiving ice warnings. As icebergs move south into warmer waters, they melt, and it is not typical for icebergs to reach this far south. This was discussed by Captain Moore of the SS Mount Temple, one of the ships that responded to Titanic's distress call. You may see bergs, but I have never in all my experience known the ice to be so far south. The southern route Titanic was taking may have created a false sense of security for Captain Smith. Captain Moore was also asked during the American inquiry, suppose you had been warned in the afternoon of Sunday that ice was ahead. Would you have considered it prudent or wise, under such circumstances, to have continued your speed as fast as 12.5 knots per hour? To which he responds, I think it was very unwise, sir. Keep in mind, Titanic was going over 22 knots. Captain Rostron testified in a similar fashion in regard to reducing speed due to ice, even though the Carpathia's top speed was only 17 knots. Now we discuss visibility on the night of the collision. If you have ever been outside on a moonless night with no ambient light from a house or a street light, you will know that you can barely see your hand in front of your face. The 2 lookouts in the crow's nest at the time of collision, Mr. Flea and Lee, both testified that they did not have access to binoculars, yet the officers on the bridge did. Keep in mind, it was intended and very normal for men in the crow's nest to have access to binoculars. According to Fred Fleet, he asked Charles Lightoller for binoculars, but was told there were, quote, none intended for us. Fred Fleet also indicated that if he had access to binoculars, they would have had enough time to, quote, get out of the way, meaning he felt it would have been enough difference in time to avoid collision entirely. Others testified that using binoculars in the crow's nest would not be very beneficial, and it is a subject of debate. Why officers on the bridge would have access to binoculars instead of men in the crow's nest, which is a more elevated and frontal position intended to be used as a lookout post, makes no sense in my opinion. Some may disagree, but in terms of who is responsible for the Titanic disaster, I hold the crew 100% accountable. Obviously, some are more guilty than others, and some are not guilty at all. Titanic was going nearly maximum speed through ocean that they knew contained large icebergs, essentially blind, and mostly just hoping on dumb luck that they wouldn't cross paths with an iceberg. Once the ship was obviously sinking, the abandonment was about as sloppy as it gets, due to lack of training and poor communication, which could easily be another video entirely. Bottom line, the priority of the crew is to ensure the safety and well-being of the people on board, and they've failed to do that. Thanks for watching.